Welcome back to another episode of the Done Deal show on the Football Terrace. I'm joined as ever by Monday by Dean Jones. How are you, my friend?
I'm probably better than you, mate. I mean, felt a bit for you watching that Brentford game. I mean, was that the ultimate low? I mean, I know you've probably said that a lot of times, but I mean, your video was actually sent to me by someone else who had no idea that I even knew who you were. So your video on Twitter found its way to me within however many minutes of you doing it, and yeah, it wasn't someone we knew each other, mate. So I mean, how long did
Yeah,
the recovery take?
days. It's still going on now. This smile
Yeah.
is fake. This is not real. I'm not happy. Yeah, it was a very painful weekend to watch, and yeah, I snapped because I feel like I've been given every excuse by Man United fans, by the media, of this will fix it, that will fix it, and I've been resolute the whole time. I don't think it'll be fixed until we force them out. And every time I see these embarrassing moments happen, I obviously know that the Malcolm Glazer and Joe, he's dead actually, but Joe Glazer, these guys, I know they didn't pick the team, they ain't coaching the side. I
Yeah.
get they didn't make the mistakes that De Gea made and whoever else did, but it was a case of it's a manifestation of what they've done has led to this, and I'm just very, very angry at how the club is run. So yeah, not in a great space at all. We've got lots to speak about today, though, people. Rabiot to Manchester United. Some saying done, some are saying very close. We're going to delve into that for you. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and he's moved to Chelsea. Some reports now suggesting they think it will happen maybe as early as this week. Maybe a £50 million bid for Anthony Gordon. Looked very decent, by the way, the other day. But 40 to 50 million pounds is a supposed asking price. We're going to talk Yeremy Tielemans. We're going to speak Ruben Neves, plus a little bit more for you on some outgoings from clubs as well. Any questions you've got, get them in. Make sure you're smashing like buttons and subscribing to the Football Terrace as well. Very, very important that you do that for us. But I wanted to start with Manchester United. As you know, there's so much turmoil around them. It's reported that Rabiot is closer than ever. There was a report from Tavalieri yesterday evening that the personal terms have been agreed. There's actually a video that's just been put out on socials of someone wishing him all the best in England, and he's saying cheers and thank you, goodbye. Whether he's just being polite, completely understands it, or he's actually on his way to Manchester United, it doesn't really matter. It does feel like this deal is going to get done.
Yeah, I mean, I was told last night, I was texting some people after texting you and seeing what we were going to chat about, and obviously Rabiot was going to be one of the things. I was texting someone and they said that this should become clear by Wednesday. It's going one way or the other by then. If this isn't close to completion or done by Wednesday, then something's gone wrong, or Rabiot's said no, because there's been no problem from the Juve side of things. They've been desperate to get him out the door so that they can get on with their own plans for the season. United obviously just want almost anyone in at this point, but Rabiot seems to them to be a good option and want it good value. But ultimately, yeah. So I was told Wednesday we should see something happening by then. And for United, that'll kind of be seen through as a breakthrough if they can get that done. I know that a lot of fans aren't excited by the arrival of Rabiot potentially, but look, he's got to be an upgrade on what we've seen at the weekend. He might give Christian Eriksen a bit more license to play the way that United are going to benefit from his play. There was so many red flags in that performance at Brentford that something has to happen before the Liverpool game. And whether that, I don't think the option is immediately after watching the game, I was like, you have to just drop half this team and play kids. But then the more you think about that, it's like, well, it's not really fair on those young players that come in to have to go out against Liverpool and, potentially could get destroyed, couldn't you? It could be one of those days. Think back to when Man United beat Arsenal 8-2 that day and what it did to Arsenal's mentality for about the next year. Some players couldn't really get over that from that Arsenal team. I think Carl Jenkinson was one that played, I think it might have been his debut that day, and never really recovered. But and that's what you would be risking, if you give people a chance against those sorts of teams, it can work the other way. But by getting someone like Rabiot in, and maybe someone else too, because they are trying to get 2 signings done this week, if they can get that forward over the line, that would be extremely helpful. You just can't have that much faith in United, though, in terms of their recruitment policy and actually getting 2 deals lined up in 1 week. I mean, that seems almost impossible given what we've seen.
Of course, Dean, and I think you look at how long this Rabiot deal's taken. Juve were willing to let him leave for free, so they want him gone. Yeah, he basically asking to have his salary matched, which I do think's fair. I don't think we're in any position to be saying, "Oh no, actually, you're going to be on half the amount." Like he wants €7 million a year. That isn't a lot. It's less than what I think we pay people like Scott McTominay that are awful, less than what we're paying Fred, who is awful. Rabiot is I look at Rabiot in this way. He is better than what we've got, but he is still not good enough to, I've heard rumors he could be in the team for the game on Monday night against Liverpool. Great. Is he going to make us? Is he going to help us win that midfield battle? Not in my opinion. We may be a little bit better, but it's a step. That second signing is needed, and that's a real interesting one. The second signing, isn't it? Because the reports about De Jong, every 5 minutes they're changing, and from credible sources, there are some that are he's going to pick if he leaves. If he leaves, he's going to pick Chelsea. The next minute, everybody is convinced it's going to be Manchester United. You had Alex, I want to say Alex Scott is his name. It might be Alex Crooks, sorry, who said last night on TalkSport that he's heard that he'll be a Man United player by the Liverpool game on Monday. Is it more likely to be another midfielder that United bring in as that second signing, or do you think it will be an attacker of sorts, a Gakpo, another central striker? I mean, I know we've been linked to 2 or 3 more. I haven't read through the stories on who we're linked to, but do you think it's going to be an attacker or another midfield player?
I mean, I was expecting Rabiot plus an attacker just because they are so blunt up front at the moment. And then I know that is something that it's almost a case of urgency at the moment that they get that attacker through the door. There's no doubt that they're pursuing De Jong and Rabiot at the same time. So I can believe that. But they've obviously, the breakthrough for De Jong has taken so long. Look, he played for Barcelona and actually played quite well. I don't think... He still doesn't want to leave. Xavi doesn't actually want to lose him. And this is the big dilemma that you got to speak to someone in Spain who covers Barca. He said the thing is, like, the players are so used to hearing stories and public statements from presidents here that they're basically taught to ignore the noise, focus on their jobs. And until they're told that this is happening, you need to have this conversation, they just literally ignore it because so much happens at a club like Barcelona. It has done for years, even before Laporta was there. They had different problems ongoing. So De Jong's kind of just getting on with his day job and would rather stay there. Now, obviously, Chelsea have pursued De Jong, and that's gone further than I initially thought it would. You know, when it was brought up in conversations, I don't think Chelsea really expected that conversation would be brought up again, but it did. It's come up a few times now. And Man United, for the want of trying to ignore the noise, and they've had to face up to the fact that they've got competition to sign him. But I've said all along, Man United will not give up on De Jong until either deadline day passes or he's wearing a Chelsea shirt, because they won't. They've put way too much time and effort into this. They're still convinced that De Jong would join them if he was forced out of Barcelona. He still is seemingly being forced out of Barcelona, and so they'll keep waiting. I'd be very, very surprised if De Jong was in that lineup for the Liverpool game. But Alex Crook has got Man United stories right before, so you've got to respect people's sources.
Yeah, again, I'm open-minded. I hear I'm not one of these people that, because I don't want it to be the truth, that's what I believe. There's credible people saying he's going Chelsea if he leaves. There's credible people saying he's going Man United if he leaves. In terms of attackers, what are the names regarding United that you're sort of hearing that seem kind of credible that might come in?
Well, it's interesting. Like the Kalajdzic one, it keeps being brought up. And I mean, Kalajdzic has been linked with people going back to January. He was linked to Tottenham. And there was something in that. Tottenham saw him as like an alternate player that they could use in their attack. But obviously Tottenham have moved on from that since then, decided not to go down that route. And Man United are now being linked with him. No offer has gone in to him or the club at this stage, but he is a player that's been put to them as potentially available and one that they've been told to consider. There's obviously Cody Gakpo, which is one that United still feel is one that can be concluded by deadline. So that's one that's really interesting. Jamie Vardy, I noticed, has come out again. Initially on this show, we were talking about Jamie Vardy to Chelsea, and that's legit. And there has been an inquiry in that sense. Jamie Vardy, I'm told, there's 3 clubs that have inquired about him. I don't know the third, but I know Chelsea and Man United are 2 of them. So I'm not saying it's likely, because I'm not sure Leicester can afford to even let this happen, given the state of their club at the moment and the fact that, there's 4 other players trying to get out the door. But that's an interesting option. Ultimately, it will also depend on what happens with Ronaldo. Like, he can't find a way out of this football club. He still wants to leave. At the moment, he hasn't been able to find a way out of United. And, whether you want to believe that Chelsea could go for him if Todd Bowley decides to take matters into his own hands and sign him despite the fact that Tuchel doesn't want him. Bayern Munich clearly aren't going down this route anymore. They tried to get him there, not going to happen. Napoli was a bit left field, but it was seen as a way to carry on playing at the top level. Not happening. Atletico Madrid obviously touting around, not happening. So honestly, like Chelsea at the moment seems like probably the most realistic option for Ronaldo, but still don't see it happening. If Ronaldo was to leave, I think United sign 2 forwards for sure. But even if he doesn't, I think they might have to sign 2 forwards. I can see United signing a forward within the next week or so and then going in for another forward in the run-up to deadline day, if not even on deadline day, because they are that short at the moment. And there's such worrying signs. And in pre-season, I was kind of tricked because I forget about pre-season and the fact that the intensity of it isn't what the Premier League is and that you can't get too carried away. But there were some really good signs in terms of the decision-making in the final third and the fluidity of United's play between Rashford, Sancho and Martial. Obviously, with Martial not being there for the first 2 games, I think that is a bit of a game changer, to be honest. Like, I didn't think United would ever rue the day when they couldn't pick Martial, but I do think it's been a big factor, the fact that they've had to play Eriksen there at first, and now Ronaldo, who's not had the full pre-season and hasn't been on playing with their style of play. He can't shut down and press and have the fluid movements with Martial and Sancho, with Rashford and Sancho that were there before. It has actually affected them, and we're now seeing that there is not enough depth to that attack, and Sancho just hasn't been on his game. Like, where's Sancho gone? I'm not sure. Like, this is a massive problem for Ten Hag. He's got so many issues to fix. And one of the only things he can do in the next 2 weeks is to push the board to sign players, because once that September deadline passes, he is in big trouble. He has to get like 4 or 5 players through the door, you know? Like, it's that desperate at this point.
Mate, I completely agree. And I think that, we're going to, on the Top 6 show tonight at 6 o'clock, so make sure you're tuning in, people. We're going to kind of delve into it from more of a fan's point of view and what needs to change. But from a transfer element, you think about Jamie Vardy. Now, Jamie Vardy is exactly the type of makeshift. And I say makeshift in the sense of he's better than everything we've got outside of Ronaldo in an attacking sense. But he's quality. He's going to take chances. He'll score goals for you. Some of the players' names that I'll see us linked to, I look at them as Igalo level signings, if that makes sense. And we're not going to progress that way. Ten Hag has been let down. He isn't going to want to say, like, he's kind of alluding to that publicly already. Some of these people have leaked information already. And this is what ends up happening all the time at United. People get let down. People get annoyed. They leak things to the press. The fans start infighting. And what we end up doing is we lose focus on what the real problem is. And it's the way the football club runs and the way the football club operates and the people that are in charge. It's crazy to see, but it's certainly going to be an interesting next couple of weeks, 2 weeks or so until the transfer window shuts, who Man United are kind of, as you say, who they're going to go in for, who they're going to try and sign. And listen, it's funny, really, because I know you got a lot of stick from that Melt. I can't remember his name, that wannabe journalist, when you mentioned Jamie Vardy and clubs being linked to him. It's funny how, since you said it, the amount of other, the Athletic are talking about it now. People, me, I'll always call things out for being right.
Yeah.
You didn't say he was going to leave. You just said, you're hearing rumors that there might be some inquiries for him. Since then, some of the biggest football brands in the country have spoken about it. And, that I don't know if that guy's done an apology article. Right. I'm sorry for calling Dean Jones out. This is what happens. People, because you don't talk in bullet points, strangely, people don't remember it all. It's what I've said it so many times to you privately. It's crazy. But viewers, what do you think is going to happen in relation to this situation? Who should Man United be going for? Are they buying the right type of players, or is their season over before it has really begun at all? And that doesn't even feel like a hyperbolic YouTube statement. I genuinely mean it. It feels like it could be over.
Do you know what I was thinking of United too? And this is a massive gamble that they took. So they were on the tail of Neves and Tielemans from April, May. Like, they've been considering at least April, May, pursuing signings like that. And now you're looking at it and you're like, imagine they just got it, just had done Neves or Tielemans. And now you think, well, maybe they can still go back in for him. Why would a Premier League team help Man United at the moment? They're not going to. And this is the new issue that Man United have got. They can't just suddenly knock on Leicester's door and offer 35 million for Tielemans, expect to get him, because it's so late in the window. Leicester would need to replace him. And that's obviously going to be the case too if another club was to sign him. But Leicester will consider themselves at the moment as being probably competing for a similar spot in the table that Man United might potentially be. They know that Man United have got loads of money to spend. So they either rinse them and say, yeah, you can have Tielemans, he's £60 million, and just put something stupid. Or by doing that, also price them out. It's not in anyone's interest at the moment in the Premier League to help Man United on the transfer front. And this is why I wonder if they do end up turning to these players. I mean, obviously, Rabiot might be an example of that. Juve don't care if they're helping Man United right now. They're just trying to get rid of a player. If United feel that he'll be helpful, then fine. Sasha Klajdzic, like these types of players, like they're from clubs that don't care what's happening with Man United. If United were knocking on the door, say Calvert-Lewin was fit at the moment, and they were trying to get a Calvert-Lewin, I'm just not sure that even Everton would be willing to do business, because they'd be thinking, no, we're not helping you out of this mess. And that's a new situation. I'm not sure Man United have ever had this kind of low.
No, I completely agree. It's almost, listen, as a Man United fan, it makes me angry. As a football person, it makes sense. Like, Man United are always a sleeping giant in the sense of we could bounce back. In the sense of if we suddenly started being run right, we could be dangerous for people. So why would you do anything to help Man United be better? It doesn't make any sense, because we're everybody's competitors in one way, shape, or form. The teams that are in front of us want to see us down low. The teams that want to finish in front of us and whatever else want to do it. And still to this day, beating Man United is a scalp that Ben Mee, when he tweeted, was like, I barely tweet on it. I barely use Twitter, but it's not every day you score a winner against Man United. It shows how painful it is. That shows how big a football club we are, that it still has that effect, but how embarrassing that it is that we're run the way we are. And a lot of rivals want to say things like, United are irrelevant now. You're a dead club. Why are we still talking United? But listen, if we were actually irrelevant, getting beat 4-0 at the weekend, nobody would have tweeted or spoke about it. It's the trending news, and it's as big as that. Viewers, though, we are speaking Aubameyang on the show coming up. We've got £50 million Gordon bids in the making as well. We're going to be speaking Neves and Tielemans very shortly, but please make sure you're smashing the like button for us. Really important to the Football Terrace that you get that done. It truly, truly is. Give that a smash now. Let's get the stream past at least 1,000 likes while we're live. And if we do, we'll gift you some free memberships. We've got another membership video coming for you first thing tomorrow morning. You have to be a member to see that. That's been edited today. We recorded yesterday in the studio. So make sure you've got your membership renewed. Make sure you're ready for that to come out tomorrow. Before we move on to Chelsea, I just want to get some updates on Yeremy Tielemans. I think there's been some interesting kind of news in relation to him in the last few days around Arsenal maybe stopping their pursuit this summer, maybe wait until January or next year. Him and Ruben Neves are players that a lot of people want to see kind of move to their clubs this year. What's happening with these two midfielders?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a confusing one, because particularly with Tielemans, who's been linked with United and Arsenal for months, and there's been literally no movement on that, no offers. And the player, to be fair to him, he hasn't kicked up much of a fuss, but that's because there's been nothing to kick up a fuss about. There's been no offer. Now, I checked this out yesterday because obviously the Arsenal fans were chanting at Tielemans, you want to join the Arsenal, whatever it was that they were singing at him. So I spoke to someone last night who's well connected there, and they are still plotting a potential late move for Tielemans in this window. And now this is all dependent on a couple of factors. I'm told there are basically two outstanding issues that they're exploring within their current squad. And the outcome of those two situations will dictate whether they actually go ahead and make this bid for Tielemans. Now, you'd imagine that needs to be cleared up pretty quickly, because Leicester will not welcome a late bid in this window for Tielemans. So I don't think this can drag on too far. But yeah, speaking to people, one yesterday, actually one today as well, just to double check this, it is clear that Tielemans is still a player that Arsenal are considering a late bid for. I think that's really interesting when you consider that Arsenal have had such a bright start to the season. I mean, we kind of expected it. They had a good pre-season. The fixture list was very kind to them. They had a potential nice way to start the campaign if they could get off to a good start, and they have. But I think you look at this squad now. It's looking bright. I can't remember the last time Arsenal were in a situation where they were approaching players at the start of a new season and they were like a tempting proposition. It wasn't really the case. Last season, like out of Europe, scrambling around, not sure really where they should be shopping. Could they still go and knock on the door of big clubs? Did they have to go to, I don't know, France and try and get some bargain deals? Or now they've been able to push the boat out a little bit. And I think that they've still got it in them to make 2 late signings in this window. One, a wide forward, and one, a midfielder. That would really, really be a statement. So I'd still look out for Tielemans. Don't know who that wide midfielder is going to be yet. It's a complex one. They're trying a lot of different things at the moment, Arsenal seemingly. But yeah, if they were to get in those two phases, and I think that we are looking at a realistic top 4 push. I see people are now talking about top 3. I still think personally that's going to be a bit beyond them, but we'll see. That they have had a really good start.
Apologies, sorry about that. I've had some issues with the mics today.
That's all right.
Yeah, look, they definitely have had a very good start, Arsenal, and they look brilliant. I was just saying to some gooners last week with this Tielemans thing. Equally, look, United still need midfielders. This is one of the things with the Rabiot deal that's crazy. Rabiot's 17 million. Tielemans is available for about 25. That's why it don't make sense to me. He's meant to be coming in to replace Scott. Scott McTominay is meant to be a box-to-box. United should be all over this deal. Man United should be saying, listen, you want out of Leicester. We're prepared to pay the price. You can pay him a much bigger salary. It's great. Listen, maybe Rabiot is the choice of Ten Hag, and we've got to kind of trust that. But it makes no sense. Arsenal is a little different. I kind of look at it along the lines of, I want to say this in the right way, really, but I still think Arsenal need more to achieve their full potential this season. They get an injury or two and they're light. I don't understand this kicking the can down the street over £25 million. I think that I've heard that they can't. I saw a report last week from, I think it's Sam Collins, very credible guy, that they can't afford both a winger and a midfielder. Maybe that's a little gamesmanship, and that will change as and when a couple of players leave. So maybe this is just trying to hang on to the end of the season. But Arsenal certainly need, in my opinion, another midfielder, and they need that winger to really achieve their full potential, because they look brilliant right now. There's no doubt. And I think that a lot of people that expected them to just kind of, they were a team where I felt like their preseason was real. I felt what they were doing in preseason had a real bite to it. And it was a continuation of the progression that we'd seen last year. And they've started this season like a freight train. They look dangerous, and there's still so much growth to come. Like, I don't feel like they're a team that are at their ceiling yet. And if they were to add a player like Tielemans, they'd be in a seriously commanding position. How about Ruben Neves? Again, another name that was linked with moves away, but it's gone very, very quiet. Like, nobody seems to be looking to buy him right now, or are we missing something here?
No, I don't think you're missing anything. I mean, there's even been talk that, could Ruben Neves sign a new contract if he doesn't leave in this window? Now, look, I'll be honest. I can't see that being the case. I mean, so far, Neves hasn't shown much willingness to look to extend his stay at Wolves. And I know his agency have other plans for him. I'm surprised. I have to say, I am surprised that his representatives haven't managed to secure him a move elsewhere. I do think Wolves will make him an offer. I do, and I think they probably already have. But I think he's probably waiting the window out, and then they'll go for it again. I'm very surprised that Neves is still where he is, and also that nobody's actually putting that offer. Like you say, it doesn't make any sense. I know people say like football isn't like playing Football Manager or whatever, but sometimes you do wonder if it's overcomplicated. Because like you say, like you look at Yeremy Pino Deal available for about £25 million. Man United or Arsenal, Man United particularly, why are you not just doing that? You've got this gaping hole. You've had it for 2 or 3 years, maybe longer. And it's still there, and it's just not a lot of money. So yeah, totally see that. But yeah, at the moment, they're again, I checked this one with someone this morning, and not really anything on the table.
Yes, it's an interesting one for me. With Chelsea needed a new midfielder, United, Arsenal, as you mentioned. Plus, Liverpool could do with another midfield player, and it's just sitting there. And sometimes I do look and think maybe there's something we're missing. I remember every year when I was a bit younger, a bit more naive, and I was like, why is nobody buying William Carvalho? Turns out he weren't that good, really. And it was just people thought, well, we see Neves more, so maybe it's not the same example. But there we go. Viewers, keep smashing like and share buttons. A big transfer that's been brewing for a few days now, Dean. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Fabrizio Romano has said they're in direct contact. Luke Edwards from the Telegraph, hence the title that people are asking about, has stated, I think Aubameyang is going to end up at Chelsea as he needs a player. So there are reports that it's a done deal is expected soon, and it has to be soon because there's 2 goddamn weeks of the window left. Like, we're not in May anymore. Do you see this being a deal that Chelsea are going to activate and put an official bid in for? Or, what's the word as far as you're hearing it surrounding Aubameyang returning to the Premier League?
Well, it's a complex one. I mean, first and foremost, Barcelona and Xavi particularly don't actually want to lose Aubameyang. They see Aubameyang as the big goal threat backup to Lewandowski this season. Barcelona started the season with a 0-0 draw, so they might need those goals. But yeah, Aubameyang, in every position, Barcelona want a first choice and a second choice. And I say position, I don't necessarily mean actual position, but a role within that team. And now Aubameyang is seen as the backup guy to Lewandowski in that team. Now, obviously, Barcelona have got a situation whereby to get to where they want to be by the end of this transfer window, someone else has to go, someone pretty significant. And that's Frenkie de Jong or Aubameyang or both. Who knows? So it's Frenkie or Aubameyang. And we obviously talked about Frenkie all summer, so you assume it's him. I mean, Aubameyang, I saw just we were about to go on there. I think Fabrizio quoted that they were looking for 30 million euros if Aubameyang was to leave. Now, that is not, speaking to people around Chelsea, that is not the sort of money that they were looking to pay for Aubameyang. So it'll be interesting to see how much further they pursue things from here. One thing I would say, though, is that relations between Barcelona and Chelsea are pretty good. And I was told by someone that Laporta is actually quite fond of Bowley and his openness and the way that he's been going about things, and that if they can help each other as such, then they kind of would. And I think that, so if you're ever going to be in a good situation to get these deals done, De Jong or Aubameyang, then Chelsea have probably set themselves up nicely because they've been in so many conversations this summer and not fallen out over any of them. So I think that's good. I think it's also worth remembering, though, that when Chelsea started to panic a little bit over signings earlier in the summer, Bowley started to talk to Tuchel about like emergency options and like, well, who would you ideally want? Who would you love to have? And maybe we can do something there. You tell me like the prime guys that would fit into your team, maybe guys that you've worked with. And Aubameyang was one of the names he was given. Now, this was around that time, if you think when Kimpembe was linked, this was that same time, among those same conversations that Aubameyang came into talks. And obviously, they did pursue to Kimpembe to some degree, and as expected, like it didn't really materialise. But for Bowley, he promises he'll try everything, right? That's the one thing that he's promising his manager. Like, I will give you absolutely everything in this transfer window, and it might not be the way that everybody else does transfer business, but I don't see any pursuit as a waste of time, because if you don't ask, you don't get. And I think that it's quite refreshing. And I think that Barcelona have kind of been fine with that so far. So it's interesting that they are being linked with Aubameyang here. And it's not like he's ungettable, like, because something probably does have to give at Barcelona. If it is 30 million euros, it's not that much, but again, it's about double what Chelsea had in mind. I think it's also worth just bearing in mind here about what do Chelsea actually want from the rest of this window, particularly in terms of their attackers. Well, they ideally want 2 attackers, and one will be an up-and-coming forward, someone that's starting to make his mark on the game, and the other is an experienced forward. And you talk about that experienced forward. Well, we've already talked about Aubameyang. We've mentioned Ronaldo before. Like, Ronaldo, obviously a guy that Bowley would want, but not Tuchel. Jamie Vardy, like, again, comes under that same umbrella. And Wilfried Zaha would come under that same umbrella too. These are guys that need no time to actually settle into the league. They're players that could seamlessly come in and start getting you goals. And ultimately, we've seen already this season, Chelsea don't have the goal output they need. And that's where they're looking. And obviously, in terms of the up-and-coming one, which I'm sure you were going to bring up today anyway, it'll be Anthony Gordon is the one that right now is seen as that guy that is, I guess, the X factor, the guy that might make a difference. And, you have to consider here, like, Chelsea have 2 tactical ploys going on in the transfer market. One is to sign players that are almost fail-proof, like like Koulibaly, like Raheem Sterling, like fail-proof signings. Like they are going to be absolutely fine. They get into pretty much every team in the Premier League. They're great. And one of those names that I just mentioned, if they were signed one of those, you'd put them in the same bracket. But then you also got to look at other kind of players that they're signing. Carney Chukwuemeka, Gabriel Slanina. These are players, both 18, that they've signed in this window that nobody was expecting. They've gone and done it because they're building for the future. And Anthony Gordon is a young player who's ahead of them in terms of his progress and what he's been able to achieve so far, no doubt. But he comes into that same bracket, and that would be a player that I think Chelsea are looking for reasons beyond just the impact. They're not expecting him to be the number 9 that comes in to save their goals. He hasn't got enough goals and assists to his name in his career so far. I think he's played 62 games for Everton. Like he's not got the sort of numbers behind him yet as a young player. But yeah, it's those players that are going to come through behind the big batch, you know?
Yeah, look, I think I look at the Anthony Gordon's going to be one of these players that certain football fans don't appreciate because he's, got that blondie, gingery hair. He's not fashionable. He's not sexy. He's not exotic. It's like, oh, Anthony Gordon. If you watch him play, though, there is a very technically gifted football player in there. And he's been one of the very few individuals at Everton in recent times who, when they play, has looked good in the majority of games. But he has been surrounded by bang average footballers with a very poor manager, and he still looks like a decent player. And this is where I say to Chelsea fans, I think sometimes I want you to just think beyond the end of your nose and stop thinking in preferences and think about your manager and club. Your manager this summer has gone for Raheem Sterling, top class, Koulibaly, top class, Cucurella, top class. Looking at Fofana, top class potential. Looking at De Jong, top class. Looking for a makeshift striker for a year or two in Aubameyang, top class. He's not just suddenly going to go, right, yeah, Anthony Gordon. I know he's bang average, but let's throw £50 million at him. Clearly, the same manager that has identified all those players who Todd Bowley has gone out of his way to sign, watches Anthony Gordon and thinks, there's a player. You can't accuse Tuchel of having got, I get there was a kind of, Lampard's got this like British bias at the club because he's English and he wants to promote the English players. I don't even know if Gordon is English. Gordon's a Scottish name, so he could be Scottish for all I know. But I haven't bothered looking at what his nationality is because it's irrelevant. Thomas Tuchel's got no English bias for no reason, no British bias for no reason. He's going after players that he thinks can make Chelsea better. At the end of the day, he isn't. I know it's a lot of money, but he's not going to be worse than Ziyech. He's not going to be worse than Callum Hudson-Odoi, who have been absolutely horrendous. And in fact, I think he scores that goal, an opportunity that Kai Havertz. I think he scores both the opportunities that Kai Havertz had yesterday. Like this player is very, very talented. Is he world class? Could he be world class? I don't think. I don't know. But there is a player in there, and I just think Chelsea fans are scoffing at this. It's because he's not a player that the timeline on Twitter goes crazy for. It's a bit like with Raheem Sterling, because the timeline on Twitter didn't go, "Oh my God, Chelsea are getting Sterling." A lot of Chelsea fans are like, "Oh, I don't want him." Then it's almost we want to sign players that make rivals jealous, as opposed to signing players that are going to make our team better. Sometimes it's kind of a weird one for me.
I think you have to look beyond like the recency bias of judging a player like this. Like last season, Anthony Gordon was superb, and it's difficult to judge a player that's in a team threatened by relegation, but he stood out. Like most times I watched Everton, he stood out massively. Now, obviously, at the moment, he's playing up more of a forward role because Calvert-Lewin's out. I mean, Chelsea are not signing. If they sign this guy, it is not as a centre forward. Like he is versatile. He's probably going to be more of a creator. He's hardworking. He's got a good engine. And you've got to remember too, like with Chelsea and their tactics at the moment, they're showing that they're very flexible. You see Reece James, for example, the way he's playing right-sided centre-back, or he plays a wing-back, like Chelsea flipping between a 3 and a 4. And Anthony Gordon would be a player that would fit into probably 3 or 4 different roles in the setups that Tuchel's using at the moment. And that's what he wants. He wants players that are adaptable, because Chelsea don't really have that. And at the moment, we're getting to a stage where they're just lacking... just lacking something that gives the other side something to think about. So whenever players are coming on, you pretty much know what you're getting. But somebody like Gordon can offer different traits in different roles. And I think that's what Chelsea are looking at. Look, they will not spend £50 million on him. Like that's not where we're at right now. Like this isn't a £50 million transfer. not sure exactly where that's come from or why people are talking about it that much. It's much less than that, especially initially. But also, of course, Everton don't want to lose this player. And so in order to get him, Chelsea are going to have to come up with something, well, pretty tasty for Everton to cave. The one thing that might help them is that Frank Lampard wants about 4 Chelsea players. So there might be a way that they can work this out. Like, I'm not really somebody that ever expects cash plus player deals to come off. But this might be one of those situations where we should probably take it seriously, because I think that, okay, to replace Anthony Gordon at the moment, Everton, first and foremost, well, they're going to need another forward threat. Well, you can give them Brozier or Batshuayi, right? So you've got 2 options that you can pass them straight away. And if they're like, well, it's also his creativity. Well, you've got Hudson-Odoi, you've got Conor Gallagher potentially. I think there's a good chance. I think that Conor Gallagher, by the end of this window, has to consider his Chelsea future and whether he goes out again. So I think that, obviously Conor Gallagher is somebody that Frank Lampard would love to have. So if suddenly you were getting 2 of those players and money and losing Gordon, and of course Everton are going to buy somebody else as well at this point, like they're still looking to buy a striker right now, then it might not be the worst deal in the world for anyone. Like, Everton won't want to lose this player, and obviously one of the reasons is that they don't want to upset this fan base any more than they've been upset in recent times. Like, we've seen a fair few protests at Goodison Park, and this might be light the paper to start the next one. But ultimately, like, when a rumor like this crops up, and I've seen it in the last 2 days, and people are asked about it on TV and they laugh, and the automatic response is almost to laugh, kind of build the player up, but then kind of knock it down and say, but it's ridiculous. Anthony Gordon isn't the sort of player at Chelsea. I'm not so sure that we should be knocking this one down quite like everybody is. Like, this is a player that will have been identified for very specific reasons. And it's too surface level to just be like, oh, Anthony Gordon, just he's had a few good games for Everton. Now Chelsea are going to spend £50 million on him because they bought Cucurella for 60 million and they're spending 85 on Fofana. They're just going to throw £50 million. If it is to be anything like £50 million, then a huge amount of that is add-ons. So if you're a Chelsea fan and that's your biggest concern right now, don't let that be the factor. Be more excited about the fact that you're getting these young players coming through like Chukwuemeka, like potentially Anthony Gordon, who are just going to be that level below like Raheem Sterling and Kai Havertz and that will grow and to be part of your team.
Yeah, listen, I think you're spot on there. And a few people have said, well, no, we're not worried about the player. We're just scoffing at the price. Well, look, it's one of those things where you're like, that again, it's just public negotiations. Maybe there's a way, as you say, of paying 25 million, but then doing a very good deal in the other, or paying 30 million, but doing a very good deal on a loan with an option to buy 4. I mean, I know a lot of Chelsea fans won't want to hear this, but for someone like a Hudson-Odoi, that in my opinion, as long as Tuchel's your manager, has no future at Chelsea. He's very rarely played him in his natural attacking positions. And the amount of times he's dragged him off early, kept him out of teams for a long period of time, like Hudson-Odoi is done for me at Chelsea. And if there's a way of doing a deal in that regards, like, it makes absolute sense to kind of focus on it in that way. Really, it does. The comment here says Chelsea are interested in James Garner, is what Simon Phillips says. I mean, it could be true. I mean,
it comes under the same umbrella. And again, I wouldn't really scoff at anything at the moment. I think that, I mean, for Man United, if Chelsea was sniffing after one of your young players, I would suggest that you just put him straight in the first team for the next game rather than sell him. Just trust in the process and let the player grow. I like James Garner, and I'll be amazed if Man United were to let a transfer like that go through. But again, it would come under the same umbrella for me. This is a player with great technical ability who's shown last season what he's capable of, is waiting for his platform. That moment might not be right now at Man United because of the pressure that they're under in every single game, and it's hard to thrive under pressure in the position that he plays and games like that. But that is an interesting story for sure, and I say one that I wouldn't be willing to write off even without checking it out.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And listen, I mean, James Garner, Man United selling him, I mean, it reads to me like we're selling him so we can buy Rabiot. And look, right now, Rabiot is probably better than him. Probably. But to not give James Garner, I'm not sure. Like, when I say not better, I mean, I don't know if he's better
right
in the Premier League right now. Like, we've all seen like
He's a French
Varane.
international. He's obviously good, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean Darren Fletcher. Like if you'd have said once upon a time that Darren Fletcher was if you said Darren Fletcher was better than Varane, people would laugh at you. But Darren Fletcher for Man United was better than Varane. Like that's as a Man United fan, that's all I really care about. I don't really care how good you were at I don't care if you're Messi at your previous club. I care about how good you are at my club. And I just think like, do you look at a player like Jimmy Garner leaving without kicking a ball for Man United? It just strikes me as just one of those deals where in a couple of years' time he could be. I'm not saying he's going to be a well beater. I'm not suggesting that at all. But he was one of the heartbeats of that very good Nottingham Forest team.
You just need a Brentford beater at the moment. You don't need a world beater. You just need someone who can beat Brentford.
We need people to beat relegation candidates with us. Do you know what I mean? That's what we need. You know, it's crazy right now, and it just feels like an interesting one. So, I mean, look, if Rabiot comes in and he's brilliant, then you won't hear another word about it from fans. But it just right now feels like a little bit of a kick in the teeth. And I think Chelsea, if they sign him, are signing a really good football player. There's no doubt. And I know we sort of started this Chelsea segment on Aubameyang. I was watching Chelsea yesterday, and I have to say, with an Aubameyang, they smashed Spurs by 2 or 3 more goals. I mean, the chances that were missed by Havertz and just poor movement when they had the ball in great positions. I mean, sometimes, Callum Hudson-Odoi needs to release that ball earlier, but they look really good without that finisher. And as long as they don't sign a striker like Lukaku that damages the fluidity and, of course, the dressing room, if they were to land an Aubameyang and then add a bit more quality around them, a bit more in the midfield, this Chelsea team was really good. Considering it was Spurs, who some have tipped to challenge for the title, a lot of Spurs fans that won't go that far have said we're going to make top 4 and we'll finish 10 points plus in front of Chelsea and Arsenal. The difference in overall quality yesterday, we obviously know there was some controversy at the end with, a little bit of sadomasochism and hair pulling and all sorts of madnesses. But yeah, Chelsea could add that striker, maybe one more signing. I think they really look set for the season.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously there are players out there in the market like now, like a Morata or an Icardi, but I imagine they've probably been burned by players like that too many times at Chelsea, and so they might not go down that path. But like we talked about, like maybe somebody like Wilfried Zaha. Now he's not quite like Aubameyang, but it's certainly someone that Chelsea have had an eye on throughout this transfer window, and I know that like that one's been gently progressing. Now something like Zaha would be, again, a cash deal, like we were talking about for Anthony Gordon, but also you're in this the situation again where Chelsea have got 5-6 players at the moment that they can use as bait to say, okay, like we understand you don't want to lose Zaha right now; he's key to you. But what if we give you this player and this player? You've still got like, I'm not saying Hakim Ziyech would want to join Crystal Palace, but like there are 5 or 6 players that are up for grabs. Ziyech, Hudson-Odoi, these guys, they're all playing in the same positions and not getting anywhere. Conor Gallagher might become available again, might fancy going back to Crystal Palace. Maybe Ross Barkley wants to go to Crystal Palace. I don't know who it's going to be, but again, Wilfried Zaha, I think, is somebody that would come into that bracket, and I think that it'll be interesting to see who that experienced head is that Chelsea turn to for goals, because they've got to do it. They have to. Like you look at Raheem Sterling and Kai Havertz, and they're giving you something, and it is good what they're offering that team, and their movement's great. But with Havertz particularly, he hasn't always got that natural instinct for goals, and it's dangerous. It is dangerous to continue with this. So I don't think Chelsea would be willing to take that gamble.
Yeah, I get that. And listen, Ziyech, would he want to go Palace, as you mentioned? Probably not. But if we get to the last 2 or 3 days of the window and he's told you're not playing here at Chelsea and nobody else has come in, it's game time. And for a lot of players, like games, as long as he's not losing, you're not going to lose salary when you go on loan, because the new club either pays it or your club pays some. I think there's so many clubs that want to get rid of players in just inside the top 6 that I feel like the last week, 2 weeks of this window, we could see a lot of movement and almost like a lot of desperation from players to go, I want my move. I want game time, because I don't just want to sit on the bench and get paid my money and not be sort of kicking a ball, as it were, given the chance to, rejuvenate my career, whatever it may be. It's definitely going to be an intriguing one there. Put a bet on West Ham, might be worth a punt. I don't for what.
Go down, go up.
Yeah. I mean, they've not started very well.
I don't know whether that's to make the European spots or to go down. I'm not sure.
Need the context there, my friend. We always say that on the
territory. Sure what we bet on.
We need the context on these comments here. There's a few comments that have come in here. First one says, why pay 50 million for Gordon when you basically have to play him with CP, is that Christian Pulisic?
Pulisic, is he saying?
You basically have him with Pulisic.
Maybe you're saying you already have Pulisic. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I can get that.
I mean, that's a fair point. That's a totally fair point. I mean, maybe it opens the door for Pulisic to get the transfer he wants. Maybe you know, at the moment, Chelsea, while they're open to players like Ziyech and Hudson-Odoi, I'm leaving. Like Pulisic is not one that they've really showed much willing on so far, and maybe they would be more willing. I would say Christian Pulisic at the moment is a better player than Anthony Gordon. There was that spell with Chelsea. I mean, it's a while ago now, but I remember there was a back end of the season. Must have been the season before last, when he was the go-to guy for Chelsea for a bit, and he was fit and he was in form, and I was like, oh, he's actually going to do it. Like all the jokes made about how, you know, an American will never come and light up the Premier League and all this kind of stuff, and I was thinking, this guy's actually doing it. He's obviously gone off a bit then. He's had badly timed injuries. But I still am a big fan of Pulisic. I think he's great, but you've got to use him correctly and has to work in the right system. And at the moment, I'm not sure that system is there for him at Chelsea.
Listen, I get you completely. A few people saying the same thing. 50 million for Gordon makes no sense. Hopefully, we don't get.
I mean, we have said it's not going to be a 50 million deal. I don't know. Again,
yeah, I'd be very surprised. I mean, having said that, I do remember when people said nobody would pay 50 million for Cucurella, and it ended up being 62.
Yeah, and actually, and that's just the other thing to consider. Like, even if it got to 50 million, it's just not as much money as it used to be in the world of football, you know, because it's not. It wouldn't be that much up front. It's that much with add-ons, which means they've had such a degree of success over the course of their contract that he has become worth a £50 million footballer over the past 3-4 years, whatever it ends up being. So it's just that price tag thing. It distracts you from clear thinking sometimes about whether a player is good value. But if, for example, Gordon was about 25 million up front, which I think is much more reasonable and much more what Chelsea would be looking at, and then another 15, maybe 20 if Everton would get a good deal out of it in add-ons, then so be it. I mean, Anthony Gordon is very young, he's very good, and could easily be worth that kind of money.
Yeah, no, he could, especially as things progress and move forward. There's no.
Fofana's being talked about £80 million.
Well, listen, I think Martinelli has knocked 20, 30, 40 million off that asking price weekend. Like, he didn't. I mean, in fairness, he probably had that. This is where you run a risk as a manager playing someone that doesn't want to be there anymore. You run the risk of their mind not. Like, was he really committed in the sense of?
It was a tough battle for him.
I mean, it was a hard battle, but sometimes it's almost, you know, like when you're at work and you get to that Wednesday or Thursday before you're back to on Aussie for 2 weeks, and you sort of down tools a little bit. There must be that element of footballers that kind of know they might be leaving, or why are you still playing me? I don't want to get injured, because if he picks up an injury, his deal could be off. And I'm not saying that Martinelli wouldn't have cooked him anyway, because Martinelli's brilliant. But again, Rodgers and dodgy decision. But yeah, £80 million for him seems it is a risk, because if it doesn't work out, it's a huge amount of money. You're not talking 40 million with add-ons; you're talking £80 million guaranteed. But it's going to be intriguing. Grey Wolf Dinner here says Gordon is Everton's best player. He fits the system.
He is, yeah. He pretty much is their best player. Yeah, I'd agree with that. And he was even at times last season when they had Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin and Pickford. Like, there were times when Anthony Gordon was the one that you could always rely on. So again, like, I don't think this deal is going to be £50 million, but say £40 million with the add-ons and stuff. Like, I think it's not a bad deal if it was to ever come through. I mean, we're talking about this like it's done almost, like this is early stages, and it's there's a lot of work to be done still.
A hell of a lot of work indeed. There really, really is. Tuchel's signings have so far been spot on. No issue paying 50 million for Fofana, is what Mish has got to say there. I think a lot of people again agree. It's almost that's what kind of confuses me with some fans, is you get this element of, I love the fact that we're buying the manager's players until the manager's players aren't what you want. It's like, so you're backing the manager, or is it you just want what you want as fans? Like, I know we're very like self-indulgent now as football fans. I think all fan bases have people that are just, I want the players I want, as opposed to what the manager wants. Which is, we're one of our guys, one of our panelists on the Top 6 show said 2 weeks ago he believes he has a better talent ID than Thomas Tuchel. He thinks that if you gave him the transfer budget, he'd spend it more wisely than Thomas Tuchel.
This is like people that say they could play a full season of Premier League games and score like 15 goals. Like, People don't. I don't think people sometimes understand.
Do you know,
Like you wouldn't score a goal. You would. A normal person would not score a goal.
it's a bit like, I know he ain't that good, Scott McTominay, and everyone laughed when he tried that round the world out to use his hand. And there are some people that when it comes to the flicks and tricks and keepy uppies and when they make a YouTube video and their touch is amazing, it's like even the guys, the brilliant guys, Billy, I can't remember his surname now, from F2 for freestylers.
Yeah.
He's very good, very good. But you think he does all those shots in one take? Yeah, you feel like that's how you see it is how it was. Sometimes I haven't asked him this question, but I guarantee you sometimes it's like, 6 hours of filming before we got that perfect shot. That's how those things can sometimes work. But the point I'm kind of making is if you put the average Twitter user that thinks he's a better baller than Scott McTominay, put them in a cage and said, go head to head, Scott McTominay would wipe the floor with them. Like as much as he doesn't look good when he's out there against other top Premier League players, these players are so superior. The likes of Emil Heskey that were laughed at, when he was playing with normal average people, like on a Sunday League team as a kid, he'd have been scoring 7-8 goals a game. That's how good these football players are in actuality. It's just when you put them in the elites, I see people do it with fighting. Oh, I think I could beat so-and-so up in a fight. I remember a mate of mine really thought he could beat Amir Khan up. Like, you do know, this is like peak Amir Khan. So you do know Amir Khan would put you in a coma inside a round. Like, it's not even, it's crazy. Honestly, did you see the viral video a few weeks ago of a guy giving it the big one to a doorman, and the doorman ends up hitting him and knocking him out? And it turned out
I did see it. Yeah, I did see that. Yeah,
it was Julian Francis, the former ex-British, I think British champion heavyweight. Yeah. And people you could hear going, "Don't start." That's Julian Francis, right? I said, "Don't." And this is old man Francis, like in his late 50s now. One little jab and the guy was out. Imagine what Anthony Joshua would do to a normal bloke, right? And some people think, I could do him. But I think they believe it in their heads. Like, people do really think, if me and my Sunday League team went out there, and most Sunday League teams couldn't beat the England ladies team, and I mean that with absolute respect.
They come nowhere near, yeah, probably.
They wouldn't. Again, nowhere near a men's team. Nowhere near a men's team. They get ripped.
And I think we sometimes get lost in that. I mean, the thing with Man United too at the moment, obviously, is like Scott McTominay, like the levels you have to get to even be at Man United as a kid, then to break through each level, get to the first team, get in the squad, get in the starting 11. Like, there is such a small percentage of people in England who are brought up here going through the system that ever get to be at that level. So Scott McTominay is undoubtedly an excellent footballer, but there are other factors that then come into being at that level. And obviously at Man United, it confidence has just shattered the entire squad. And you see, Bruno Fernandes was like the go-to guy for however long after arriving, and what's happened to him? Like this, it's affected. You could almost do a ranking of like the most regressed players at Man United over the last 3 years. It would be incredible to see where these players were at and how they've slowly fallen off a cliff. Like, it's unbelievable. Nobody has got better at Man United for years, have they? Like, nobody.
I've said it on. This is why I like when some people didn't like Bruno from day one, and they now go, "I told you he was this bad." And my view, I don't think your opinion might be right, but it's too murky an environment to confirm it, because every player has gone backwards from who Fergie left behind to every player we've signed. No one has maintained the level of their previous club or gone to the next level. Everyone has gone backwards. It's amazing to see. I mean, even like when Liverpool were a bad team, Steven Gerrard was still really good. They still signed Fernando Torres. They still had, players that did very well for them. I'm just using them two as an example. There'll be others. They still had Xabi Alonso, Mascherano that did well for them. They still had one of the Premier League's best centre-backs in Sami Hyypiä. They weren't here. This is what Man United are going through is unprecedented. The manager himself the other day in the press conference said the players just threw they just threw our game plan out the window from the first moment. It's almost, I think if he had hair, he'd be pulling it out over what is going on at this club. It's broken beyond just the players don't have technical ability, because he's clearly seen them do these things in training, then gone, what's happened on that?
The goal kick was one of the worst things I've ever seen in Premier League history. It's like 30 years now, Premier League. I've never seen a Man United team attempt a set piece, a goal kick routine as badly as that one that they tried twice and completely failed twice, and both led to goals, directly or inadvertently. And it's just unbelievable. It really is. And again, go back to transfers, and like this is what you have to try and fix, because you've got to bring very quickly now. You've got 2 weeks or so to to sign 4 players basically that can change the mindset, not even just the quality of that starting 11. You need Rabiot to come in and show the mentality of a World Cup winner. You need other players to come in and be of that elite mentality that Cristiano Ronaldo is basically. Like, Ronaldo obviously is extremely frustrated right now, does not want to be there. But like, he's also frustrated because there's nobody else on his level. Like, nobody. Jadon Sancho was cost whatever it ended up being after a 2-year pursuit. How many good performances have you seen from Jadon Sancho so far? Like, honestly, like,
it is a
handful.
And people always say things like Terry always defends Bruno. It's not about defending Bruno. It's about not thinking. The problem is blaming Bruno for where we are is such binary, minute, sort of macro thinking that United will never get better. The fact that what's happened to Bruno has happened to every other player means that Bruno being dropped isn't going to fix us. Pogba being sold isn't going to fix us. Martial in or out the team isn't going to fix us medium to long term. Fans have got to stop thinking in these, like, it's okay when your club's very good and one player just isn't delivering to say, let's replace that player and we improve. But when everything is bad, focusing on players and even focusing on managers is wrong. If Ten Hag fails and the focus from Man United fans is still, bring Poch in and we'll win the league, you deserve this because your energy's in the wrong place. And there's a family sitting there going, I can't believe after a decade of all our mistakes, they still hate Bruno and the current manager that's failing more than us. Because honestly, that's why I call these fans that give the club their money, I call them Glazers. You must be one. You must actually like the Glazers to do it. I don't believe that Man United fans are that stupid to not see what they're doing here. They must be Liverpool fans that have infiltrated the club for the past however many years. Going, right, let's just keep funding the Glazers to keep them there. It's crazy to me, but there we go. Dean, always an absolute pleasure to speak. Viewers,
Cheers,
we're back at 5:45, actually, not 6 p.m. 5:45 for the Top 6 show. Delving into the transfer news, reviewing the weekend's games. Were Chelsea robbed? We've got Spurs fans on, we've got Chelsea fans on. It's going to be a big show. We're talking about Man United and how to fix them. We're previewing the Liverpool game as well. And we are going to talk Arsenal and how bloody brilliant they've been at the start of the season, plus much more. So I want to see you all back at 5:45. I want to see you there on the dot live. Dean, always a pleasure, mate. Until next time, people, take care.